Welcome once again to Noir Alley. I'm your host, Eddie Muller. I'm an occasional drinker, the kind of guy who goes out for a beer and wakes up in Singapore with a full beard. Now, that line may or may not describe me accurately, but it's a prime example of the wisecracks that were the specialty of writer Raymond Chandler, most of them uttered by his iconic creation, Private Eye Philip Marlowe. Today we have what is unquestionably the most unique adaptation of a Chandler novel. Released by MGM in 1947, is Lady in the Lake. Now, several weeks back on Noir Alley, we screened 1944's Murder My Sweet, the first film to take a crack at accurately bringing Marlowe to the screen. While Chandler didn't think that picture was completely successful, it busted Hollywood open for him and helped pad his bank account. Paramount paid him handsomely to write his only original script, The Blue Dahlia, in 1946. In that same year, Warner Brothers had their hottest stars, Bogart and Bacall, in an adaptation of The Big Sleep, directed by Howard Hawks. Fox got into the act the next year, adapting Chandler's 1942 novel, The High Window, as the brasher doubloon, with George Montgomery as Marlowe, sporting an inexplicable mustache. When Robert Montgomery convinced MGM to buy the rights to Chandler's most recent novel for $35,000, it seemed like a safe bet. Montgomery intended to direct the film himself, having gotten a taste for it when he directed much of They Were Expendable after John Ford fell ill. Now, given that Chandler had received an Oscar nomination for his script of Double Indemnity, co-written with Billy Wilder, and would receive his second for The Blue Dahlia, Montgomery decided to outdo all the other Marlowe movies by having Chandler, for the first time, write a screenplay from one of his own novels. The result was this, a 195-page opus that is absolutely remarkable for how bad it is. Yes, it's got great dialogue, pages and pages of it, much of it delivered by characters having nothing to do with the plot. Now, when they'd worked together on Double Indemnity, Billy Wilder was astounded to learn that when it came to telling a story, Chandler had virtually no idea how to construct a three-act scenario. And this is the proof, a totally unmanageable script from one of Chandler's best books. It reminds me of the author's response to a question about the writing process. In the morning, you start throwing up on your typewriter, and around noon, you tidy up. Well, to tidy up this mess, Robert Montgomery hired another writer, Steve Fisher. Now, coincidentally, Fisher and Chandler were both part of the bullpen at Black Mask magazine in the 30s. In Hollywood, Fisher adopted the same attitude about his craft that he'd had working for the pulps. Make sure everything fits together and don't lose your paycheck on the way to the bank. Chandler, however, took his work and himself more seriously. He was insulted that another writer reworked his story, which included shifting the action from a hot Los Angeles summer to the Christmas holidays and dropping all the scenes at Little Fawn Lake, the book's best passages. Chandler still demanded he be given a screenwriting credit until he saw the finished product, at which point he demanded his name be removed. Now, this is not to say Lady in the Lake is bad, but judging it as you would a typical detective story is impossible because it's unlike any other film in the genre. The story is seen entirely from Philip Marlowe's point of view, the most elaborate use of subjective camera ever attempted.
You're in terrible shape. Take a look at yourself.
Oh, brother.
Orson Welles had wanted to shoot an adaptation of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness this way a few years earlier, in those heady months when he seemed determined to reinvent cinema. But it was Montgomery's pal, Delmer Daves, who actually put this crazy notion in the actor's head. Daves told Montgomery about the plan he'd devised to shoot the first act of Dark Passage from Bogart's point of view, only to have Jack Warner nix the idea. Well, Montgomery picked it up and ran with it, deciding to shoot his entire movie that way. Of course, Jack Warner eventually okayed Daves's daring idea, making 1947 the year 2 movies were released using the same never-before-seen camera trick. Well, MGM executives were not amused at first. Then the PR department went to town, selling the subjective camera technique as a thrilling new dimension in movie viewing, putting you, the viewer, right in the middle of the action. They hedged a little, however, by demanding that Montgomery shoot a prologue explaining why, for the next 105 minutes, audiences were only going to see his handsome face whenever it was reflected in a mirror.
My name is Marlowe, Philip Marlowe. Occupation, private detective. You know, somebody says, follow that guy.
Fortunately for her many fans, this meant that Audrey Totter became the de facto star of the show, playing every scene directly to the camera and flaunting a pair of the biggest eyes in the business.
You'd be crazy to fall in love with me, Marlowe.
Don't I know it?
Totter was good pals with Montgomery, and when he asked her to help him pull off this risky project, she couldn't say no, even though she'd just been offered a plum role in a picture being made cross-town at Universal. Mark Hellinger and Robert Siodmak wanted her for the role of Kitty Collins in their adaptation of Ernest Hemingway's The Killers, opposite a new actor named Burt Lancaster. Oh well. Montgomery lucked out, getting himself a blonde who could make a bishop kick out a stained glass window. Co-starring Lloyd Nolan, Leon Ames, Tom Tully, Jane Meadows, and L.A. Mort as the mysterious Crystal Kingsby, here is the singularly strange Lady in the Lake.